Hey guys, how's it going? Everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
Where's everybody coming in from? Already got a few comments rolling. Looks like we've got someone from Kiev, Plano, Texas. All right. So I'm Jesse, and let me just go around the room here and see who we got. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Fabrizio, you can go first.
Hello, everyone. I can start. Yeah. My name is Fabrizio. I work at Wise, where I look after organic growth, and um, also on top of it, I kind of advise some startup funders, as well as having a bunch of relatively failed side projects that I like to do in my weekends with regard to SEO and startups.
And quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, what's a little brief on what's Wise's main goal, and then what's a little goal for this year that you guys are focusing on?
I guess Wise mission remains the same: making money moving international as cheaply as possible, as fast as possible, and as convenient as possible. We have a bunch of products with relation to money transfer, multi-currency account, and business product. Goals in terms of like marketing and SEO is kind of the same. We have a set of teams that are trying to scale activities, tapping into new audiences. Not much has changed. Obviously, it's getting bigger. We're probably not a startup anymore. We went public this year, and a lot of things that have happened. But we're still focusing on just what customers need, what they're searching for, and trying to get it right. Hopefully.
Nice. Lemore, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Limor. I'm the SEO director for SimilarWeb. Been doing SEO for almost 20 years now. Consider myself a little bit of an anthropologist. Love being inside a workplace that's also a product that's serving me and my community. Happy to be here, listen and contribute.
Good. And what's the for people that don't know SimilarWeb, what's their main goal?
Our main goal for this year is, mostly traffic growth. We are already in a trajectory for a year on that, and we just want to grow even more and get more customers and users and show the best abilities of our product. That's the main issue. We are looking to evolve and give as much as we can from our data to our users to help them better manage their way and strategies in PPC, SEO, everything digital.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll give a quick intro to myself. My name's Jesse. I'm one of the co-founders at Drop-in Blog, and we help people put blogs on websites that were not built in WordPress. So that could be with Duda, who we're doing this in partnership with today, or many other builder platforms that either don't have a built-in blog system or have a weak one. So that's kind of what we're up to. And this year, we're also focusing on growth, mostly organic as well. So this is well fitting for us doing SEO talks here. We're doing a lot of content and other organic growth things. So that's me. So I'm just going to check in. Looks like we got some people. We got India, Portugal, Venezuela, Colombia, Denver, Spain, all kinds of people filing in. So just say hi in the comments there. And if you got any questions along the way, just pop them in there and we'll try to answer them as we can. So next we're going to roll into our main presentation here from Fabrizio. He's going to talk about some of their growth strategies with SEO and other branding issues and stuff like that. So I'll hand the mic over to you, Fabrizio.
Thank you. Okay. And that's perfect. Okay, cool. I assume you can all hear me. We're gonna talk briefly about like a set of problems that throughout my journey at Wise, I started to work on SEO at Wise, where we didn't necessarily have a SEO team, as well as the time that I spend with startups and funder, and as well as my own project. I try to group some odd topics that everyone kind of asked me about, or challenges that we faced or that I've seen people facing. And definitely, by no means, in this chat, we're not going to go through the final answer about this, but we're probably going to spark the conversation around these topics, and hopefully have a good discussion after, a bit more in depth than what I was able to do in the slides. So let's start. First one, as I said, sixth topic, it goes from everything that is about picking a domain and the brand name, hire the first SEO, your first keyword research and content, like decide whether you're gonna kickstart a bit faster your program, decide whether you're gonna build or like pick off the shelf solution, and then last, like how to go a little bit about measurement. So the first part that I often notice and I often like start chatting to funders is that they pick a brand name and they have a company name, and they often don't think that hard on how their brand name and SEO and domain can impact SEO over time. Multiple reasons. Like in the case of TransferWise, actually was quite a good choice. I remember the alternative from our co-founder were things like Money Transfer 24 or like some terrible domains. And so it's actually a decent choice. But then with time, our proposition has evolved, and then we had to rebrand throughout the time. Hard to figure out on day one, yet it happened. Then these are like some ex-colleague launching this new startup in the trading space called Lightyear, but they only found the Go Lightyear domain. Another like fintech player called Monzo used to be Mondo. These are some grocery companies that, the company is called Zap, but they used to try Zap. Gorillas.io, Taxify, then change into Bolt, or like this Anna company that has got Anna.money. I think the point here is often funders don't spend time too much thinking about domain names and SEO and their brand. They just want to probably pick something really quick that can get their website up and running. Yet this stuff has got kind of consequences on the long run, and that's one part that I try to spend time with people trying to advise a bit. And an example, and what the best question that you can probably ask is, what if it gets serious? An example here from the company Bolt, which is like a taxi, like similar to Uber type of company, but as well, there is now a checkout company called Bolt. Before the checkout company, Bolt.com used to be a social network. Before Bolt, their taxi ride hailing company used to be called Taxify. It's just literally, as it stands, a bit of a mess in terms of their domains and brand. And this is something that they couldn't foresee, but now they are billion-dollar companies, and it might be challenging. I'm not saying that it's causing problems. I'm just saying that this is the kind of stuff that you would be looking into. And then on this topic, what I always get to when speaking to funders of startup is trying to be relatively methodical. Even though the early days, thinking about your domain and your brand for SEO is probably the last problem that you have. You don't have a product, you don't know what you're going, you don't know what you're launching. But I try to like advise a couple of things, literally. One is to be as unique as possible when I say getting creative, and there are many ways to do it. There are premium domains, there are like marketplaces, there are name generators, you can go into expire stuff. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And the other bit that people don't do enough, they launch a website and they don't even Google their future name. If they would have Googled it a couple of times with just a simple VPN, they would have find out that in another market just next to theirs, there's a huge, gigantic company that is already occupying Google for this brand name, which is super mega important. And then the other bit is due diligence, right? Like some companies might be completely fine in terms of like Google and branding, but then they haven't looked into trademarks. They haven't looked into the domain that they bought. Maybe they haven't done deep enough audit. Once you get to that point, you probably have a list. You put this list into a spreadsheet, and then you have to choose, which is again an hard part for funders. And then the other bit that I generally advise in this space is you can ask your friends and family fair, but also you can run a bit of survey, a bit of data on where to pick, just to get to something that is as methodical as possible, as opposed to saying, oh, I really want that name and is my dream for my company name, and then realize few years down the line that you wasted time, money, and a lot has changed. This is one area. Second area is hire the first SEO. This is the most asked question that I get generally from when I speak to people. Is like, who should I hire? What should I do? And it's very difficult if you're either an SEO or not. So if you're an SEO, you're probably okay for a little bit. If you're not an SEO, you are in this weird situation where you either have to trust someone, hoping that they will not screw up your company, or otherwise you have to get still advice from either agencies or consultants or some people on at least giving you an idea of the opportunity. And the tricky part there, I guess, is and that's why my general advice in this area is to speak to as many people as possible, or maybe pay even consultants or agency to do work to assess the opportunity. It's very difficult to bet on building an SEO team, SEO program, if you don't even know whether in the next 6 months your best way to grow your startup is SEO. And that's why it's never enough to talk to people, up to the point that you either build confidence in building a dedicated in-house team. That's what we have at Wise, and we built over time. Or otherwise, with time, you outsource up to the point where you have enough good results and work with enough freelancers or agency that you feel that now you're ready to really invest long term. And I think the thing with SEO and startups is that there's no such a thing as really fast results. It's very hard, right? It takes a lot of time and effort, and therefore getting the expectation right in this mix is really important to avoid to get burned thinking that SEO is going to deliver some magical thing in a month to get your next funding round, when it's not going to happen. So yeah, the advice when it comes to hire the first SEO, build the first SEO team, is speak to as many people as possible, and even pay for advice before making mistake yourself, if you're not an SEO or if you haven't spent enough time learning about SEO, which is always advised, because this will help you to have a better understanding of what services or what people you're hiring. Then at this point in time, probably next thing is also to assess the opportunity. That's where keyword research come in place. That's where learning about SEO doesn't really hurt. You could almost do it yourself, even though you don't know much about SEO. I linked here resources from learn.seo, learnseo.io, where you have a lot of guides and stuff to do keyword research. You can hire a consultant to help you do it. But this is really fundamental work in order to understand the opportunity. I guess, it will avoid you hiring people and investing resources in SEO before you discover that actually your product is so disruptive that no one is searching for it, and there's no way to market it in the classic way that people are searching for it already. And therefore, you might need to be very creative, and maybe SEO isn't the first thing that you have to do, as opposed to you launching Booking.com V2 that probably you don't need to teach people how to search for flight, and then you can already do the math on the opportunity. Then on the point of how fast is it, we go into the subject of should you just start from scratch, or should you try to bootstrap a bit faster your presence in Google? The reality of people launching a startup and a new domain is that you have a new domain which has got no links, no content, nothing, literally. And whatever people will advise you in terms of strategies and approach will be impactful, but it will take a considerable amount of time, as opposed to the same amount of work being done on a more authoritative domain. That's where it's not easy to do if you don't have too much SEO experience, yet you could have a stab at it. And there are two main things that I think are worth considering. Definitely the day you have a keyword research and you know roughly what type of search queries you would like to appear in, is definitely the one to get in touch with websites that already rank for this in this space. It's easier to get an affiliate deal agreed and to have a commercial relationship with a website that already rank in this space than you having to figure out entirely how to perform in one area, which is maybe possible in something very niche. But if tomorrow you want to rank for credit card, there's a better chance that you rent someone else's website than going there with your brand new domain yourself as a startup. The second thing, in terms of like going a bit faster with your domain, I think people don't consider enough buying their way into ranking. And what I mean by that, there's plenty of domain out there that for some reason the business is not doing so well, or maybe they kind of abandon things that you could buy to accelerate a little bit maybe they already have some content that is ranking already. Maybe they already have some links that could be helpful to build the good content on. So this is definitely something that I advise in the almost as an answer to the fact that people will ask you, okay, we're doing SEO for my startup. What am I going to get next month? And most likely the answer is nothing. like in next month, there's probably not much happening, no matter how good effort you're putting into this. And these are ways to maybe answer the next month question. In the meantime, then you are investing in something a bit long-term in the 3, 6, 9 months horizon of performing through your own website. And then like here we have a lot of people in the platform space that probably can comment a lot in this subject. Definitely another question that you will have is what platform do I use, right? Do I use WordPress? Do I build my own platform? Do I use more advanced platforms? Are there better WordPress alternative? It's definitely the case of thinking about this stuff. I always tend to lean towards something quick rather than not, because at this stage it's unlikely that you have enough understanding of what you need to build or buy or stitch up in order for you to build the best content management system in order to power your website. So have a choice. There are multiple options, as you can see in this chart. These are some of the most popular one out there. Pick one, pick it fast, start producing content. The day your content start performing, the day you have something that performs, it's time maybe to rethink about it. Doesn't mean that you have to switch platform, right? There are enterprise websites on plug and play platforms, right? It just means that you're more committed with developers, you're more committed with figuring out what custom feature you want and things like that, as opposed to the early days that learning how to host a blog should be your last concern, right? You don't know what to write, you don't know who to write for, you don't know literally how to do most of the things, and you should almost eliminate this concern and try to go with the easiest and fastest option, at least until you have a better understanding of the opportunity. And then last, let's talk about KPIs. You probably are at the point where you picked a platform to publish your content. You have had an understanding through some keyword research of what content you should be publishing. You started to publish it. How do you go about judging your work and whether you're making good progress or not? My advice in this area is to don't try to over measure, just because in the same way you don't have time to think about building a very sophisticated CMS or things like that. You also don't have time to look at a lot of metrics. You don't have enough data. Things like A/B tests are probably impossible if you haven't get to a significant amount of traffic. So what I generally advise to people, and actually there was someone asking me today on Twitter, same question, what would I use to measure at the beginning SEO? And the answer is, in my opinion, is pretty simple. Obviously, Search Console, which is Google telling you what you're ranking for and what your search data looks like straight from Google. You could be picking one SEO suite or one software that helps you both measuring a bit the performance as well as doing some keyword research some other activities with regards to SEO. And then the other bit, you probably need something that helps you assess what I put here in green, which is like revenue metrics. Have you generated leads? Have you generated new customers? A bit provocative, I almost tell people to not install Google Analytics, not because is a bad thing. It's just if you don't have time to look at things, or if metrics like bounce rate and things like that don't tell you anything, what's the point at that stage to install it? But I think we can discuss this a bit deeper. The important thing is to not waste a lot of time into setting up like a crazy amount of tracking that you're not going to be actioning on, and as well as having clear signals. So, okay, one clear signal is clicks and impressions. So I will religiously look at click and impression signal from places like Google Search Console to judge the fact that my blog articles are ranking better, but I will not be worrying about many other on-page interaction that could be happening until I get that thing right. The concern is that you look at 20,000 KPIs for one page, and then 6 months time you're still with this single page, lonely page, as opposed to producing a lot of content, or like launching a lot of pages and then having more meaningful data to look at. That's about it. Last on this point, when it comes to SEO, classic SEO activities, on-page SEO, link building, creating content, optimizing content, my suggestion is to lean towards what is really black and white, right? And what is really like obvious that had an impact. I didn't have this blog article yesterday. We're generating visits and customer today. Great. Things like optimizing it, things like having a few more links to it. There's not always such a clear, direct implication sometimes. And I'm not saying that these are not useful. I'm just saying that in the grand scheme of like what you can be 100% sure about, some activities are slightly less like objective, in terms of you spending time, which is very limited for a startup, and you then being able to measure it. That's it. There's a link to this presentation, wi.sc/startup SEO Duda. I have a podcast about startup SEO, but I really don't have time for it. So people listening will probably be complaining that I don't publish enough episodes. And that's it. I guess we can probably, end the presentation and then go into questions either from the audience or if Jesse and Limor has got question, we can discuss it a bit.
Cool, man. Thanks for that. Lots of good info there. Yeah, so audience, if you want to start throwing in some questions, we got lots of hellos and where we're from. But yeah, if you guys got any specific questions for Fabrizio for us to talk about, that would be great. And I'll kick it off. One thing that I had a question about is you had mentioned about when you're getting started in the SEO process, you say speak to as many people as possible before you make decisions. What people? Who are these people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one is people that could almost be competitors, and that are kind of running or doing sites in similar niches or similar verticals that you're working on. Not all of them will be shutting the door. They're probably willing to tell you a bit of what they're doing and understand a bit on how they run things. And there's definitely something to do. The other is to speak to any kind of SEO specialist that as a founder of a startup, unless you have experience in SEO yourself, before you make a judgment call of like whether this SEO that you're hiring is a good one, or whether this agency or this consultant is a good one. I would spend time with people, some consultants as well, that could be doing it on a paid basis, just to give their feelings and impressions on how they would go about it. And most of these people are willing probably to do it for free. I do it for free in my spare time, chatting to some company founders about it. Some of it probably would charge for it, but having this initial chat can probably save you a lot of time, and avoid going into the rabbit hole of like hiring an agency or a consultant, or even to hire making the commitment to hire someone in-house, and then figuring out that maybe this wasn't the right thing to do, or like the biggest problem in SEO wasn't this, and then you hired someone that was specialized in the wrong area of SEO. So it's just to get extra feedback before you make a decision, because in general, like most of the people that I speak to launching a startup, if they haven't done SEO, they are in a very difficult position to judge like the SEO that they're working with, to the point that we had some partners and companies that we know to hire their first SEO, literally helping them in running the interviews, just because it's difficult to judge an SEO if you're not an SEO. So we literally had them in like making sure that the first person that they were getting to launch activities was maybe not the ultimate person that would have led the team, but at least someone that was on the right track. Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, thanks for that. And Limor, what did you think?
Well, I love that. I'm interested in. I understand that you say prioritize content efforts in creating content, less in optimizing and linking, and fine. But when I have dev resources in a startup that's new and I don't know what's going to happen next, how would you prioritize that?
Like generally,
Would you also outsource? Would you take in a full stack?
Usually when I speak to people, or at least even us, even though from day one we had dedicated full stack developers working with the SEO team, it's quite rare that the early stage they have so much abundance of development resources. Most of the people, they have the opposite problem. Maybe we talk to them about, okay, maybe we should build this application that will launch pages and we'll do XYZ, and then they tell me we can't, right? That's why sometimes going down the route of unstructured block content is probably the easiest way to get to some traction. And then in the case that you're willing to invest and you're willing to put resources to it, that's where personally, at least our experience was to have someone in-house or have some consultant or someone that can guide these teams, or like shape a bit what these resources would do, or like simple judgment call on what platform should we use, how deep should we go in building. In our case, from day one, we built everything custom, but we were really obsessed and nuts about like doing it on the very long run. If I look back, there's some stuff that probably we wouldn't have needed to build and dedicate so much resources. So these I guess are a question, but my main advice is probably to get to a place where you have someone that is in the organization or work closely with the organization to have judgment call and advise on this. To avoid deploying developers on a project that doesn't need, could be working on a WordPress blog or on a simple blog, or maybe to under invest in this. Maybe your your product is building, let's take again booking.com, and you're trying to do it one article at a time on a blog, right, which is not gonna work, right? So I think is this level of balance that, I mean, to us doing SEO is obvious, but then to to many marketing teams as well as company funders is less so, at least when chatting to them. Yeah, I'm not sure this answers your question fully, but
Okay,
Well,
I have a follow-up question on that, if I may.
yeah.
go ahead.
If you plan on world domination, when would you start to scale languages? At the beginning, or once you're fully based in, let's say, English?
Like we did it quite early, and even on some other project that I worked on, we did it relatively early to some extent, because the day you get something right, it's relatively easy to localize it and to get it, unless there is a completely different intent in another country. If your product is available, if you serve that country, it's relatively easy to know that people will be searching for that thing as well in another country. Then it's just a matter of localizing that experience, right? Yet, I guess there are probably some processes. So, for instance, when we worked on content production, we did not do other languages until the English content production process was fully up and running. Scaling, well-oiled, enough freelancer, enough onboarding, documentation, academy
And then
on
did you
content.
create
Yeah.
completely unique content in the other languages, or did you just translate all those exact articles like word for word, or like how do you
Yeah,
approach that?
yeah. So the early days, because we had a translation team in-house at Wise, working in our customer support team, but it's relatively cheap in general, like to translate
Yeah.
to some extent. Early days, we did translate some content. Also because this is very unique to our product, but we might target English speakers in Germany just because we have worked with a lot of expats and these kind of use cases. So they need the exact same article that they would be reading in UK. They just need it in this other market. But then over time, we almost abandoned the translation like for like, and we produce in the market for the audience for in the language. So we have like language specialists in each market. I guess the early days, if you are a startup and you don't have unlimited resources, probably the challenge is to build that production capability for each language. Means that you need in-house one person that you trust that this French article is actually written in French, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
not French
yeah.
and I don't understand it. That's where the translation can be a cheaper alternative. Yet we have seen that over time, when we make enough commitment to do it, so probably I would start by just simply translating like for like, if possible, right? Like if in another market the people that you list in that article are different and there are different companies. Imagine you're doing a top 10, what are the top 10 banks in this country? If there are different banks, what are you going to be translating, right? Like you still have to localize the content to some extent. There is some stuff that can be relatively easy to translate in some industry. Therefore, why not? I think, it can get you far, but not super mega far. At least in our experience, at some point, the just translation started to fall a little bit through the cracks. Also because just one quick thing, maybe people worry a lot about the production of content when they don't have it. But then once you have it, so year 2, 3 of your startup, then you have to maintain that content. It's not just about making it; you have to look after it. And then if you don't have the people who made it, someone just translated it at some point. Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to go in there and fix it? Who's going to update it, optimize it? That's why
Yeah, it's almost
I
like
think,
technical debt when something's sliding out on the technology side, but you have to keep those things. But I guess the good thing on that too, I feel like the flip side of that is when you see some of your content that's doing really well, it kind of encourages you to like bulk that up a little bit more and kind of double down on those pieces that are doing so well for you.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I like
If
that.
you
I like
sorry,
that
go ahead.
attitude. It's like perfect the process, and then you can duplicate.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we got a couple questions here. Let's looks like we got one from Chaz here. He says, if the product you're selling is a course or a series of courses, do you have any advice on content that ranks well? Course related content. Either of you guys got any tips there?
Do you want to go, Limor?
It depends. Which topic you have to research. You have to have your curriculum. You have to explain it. Usually, I find it things that are naturally connected to whatever course you will be building. It will be easy to find the questions that people need to know. You knew that when you built the course. You know what you want to teach. My approach is to break it down. Just have it there, do some research, attach the right words, and bam. That's the
Probably,
first easiest step.
Yeah, I like to
one thing.
think that anytime with the courses specifically, I always see people to get success with like just the person who's trying to learn the thing, think about what is it that they're asking Google, right? I mean, that's true about SEO in general, but I feel like with courses, it's more specifically because usually they're trying to learn the thing, right? How do I do this particular chord in guitar, or like how do I learn, and then you can build content kind of around those questions that people might ask.
Use learn keywords 3% of the time.
Yeah.
One thing also that came to my mind is like with courses, you pretty much could be giving away the content of the course for free if you answer those questions. Then obviously, I guess is a hard balance between what content you have before the paywall and after. But I guess like it's still possible to rank, right? Even though you're giving away half of the secrets that you're going to be explaining then in the course. Most of the newspaper these days, when I click on those links, I don't actually read the article, right? They're ranking with a paywall or something is happening, right? So like that's probably one, like getting to the point where you understand what are the content that people are going to be paying for and what are the content that is going to eventually hook up people to be paying for, right? Maybe that's an interesting one to see.
Yeah, give enough away that it shows your authority and that you know what you're talking
Yes,
about.
exactly,
right?
exactly.
And then that brings people in, and then you can answer some of those questions I was talking about in those blog posts. Maybe show some of the preview videos of the stuff, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, next question. We got Sarah here. She says, for the blog of a new brand to be successful, how much does it matter how often you post quality content within your field of expertise? So what do we think about frequency when you're just getting started in a new brand? How much content do we need to roll out?
I don't think there's maybe like a specific frequency rule. But then I would definitely think about quantity, like more quantity than frequency. Like, is it like every day, every week, every month? I don't know, but definitely the quantity will impact because the early days you have no content, therefore you need to kind of pile it up before you get to that space. The early days of us launching the blog, we literally had almost someone analyzing output in terms of like production stages, like proofreading, publishing, editing, how long it was taking, how much we were doing, were we increasing the output over time, just because we knew that if we wanted to build a massive blog and we didn't have a single article, we had a couple of articles that were like not performing, we had to really produce a lot of them. And so the quantity aspect, which means that probably frequency is quite as high as you can with some quality, with like decent quality, is important. Or you risk that you publish once a month, and then after 12 months you have 12 articles as opposed to 50, and then I'm sure it changes like how much you.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to do with also you have to be like prepared on the other part with the research to be able to have all the other pieces in place, right? You have to have the keywords, you have to have the articles, topics ready, and then your editor and like these kind of things, and how much can your team, executive level down, whatever that is, manage like to make sure that content is actually going to be useful, right? Because you don't want to just be pumping out garbage. You want to be pumping out stuff that's fairly targeted, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like that's where we bottleneck, is just making sure that we have all of those pieces in place to make sure that what we're actually putting our efforts into is going to do what we want, right?
Yeah. Starting with execution is the smart thing to do at an early stage. What you can execute. When you get to the frequency stage, you'll know it. You will have the content you wanted, the base content you wanted, and then you can think, do I need once a month? Do I need once 2 weeks? What resources do I have on the long-term flow? But at the early stages, you need to do the research, just pile up all the content you have to have and see how fast you can execute it well. Not just execute it well. Totally.
Yeah, next question here we got from Racine. Yeah, this kind of, I have a similar question related to this. It says, what are the top 3 KPIs to watch out for? And also, you had kind of mentioned that, like, once you put in, once you start creating this content and you want to track some things, you said don't track too much stuff. So yeah, what are the what are the top 3 things that people getting started should be focusing on when they're getting their new content out?
Yeah, I can probably go with it. So early days for us was indexed pages, just because like the fact that you publish in pages doesn't mean that they get indexed.
Old school.
And we published a million of them, and obviously not million of blog posts, but we have like a lot of blog posts, a lot of other pages getting indexed. So index pages is just like almost like a tracker of how much content have you been producing that is actually in Google and people can search. And then second was just traffic and clicks, just that, because by the time that the article get index, ranks, and then eventually converts customer, it takes time, and it would have been a bit for the first 3-6 months would have been a bit silly for us to look at driving customers straight away. We just wanted to make sure that we could achieve traffic, right, and ranking. Then if we keep writing the wrong article, they don't drive customer, we should stop. But until we figure out how to rank, like the other objectives were a bit secondary, as opposed to maybe later in the days that if we don't drive customer, we don't even write the article. But you need to have a bit more awareness of your ability to work well, to measure other things than is just clicks, right, that you initially going to get to.
I say also impressions, especially if you're in a competitive field, you won't get clicks at first. You need to see you have higher visibility, you need to see you have higher ranking, and then you would get the clicks. But at first, many times impressions is also like what you have.
Yeah, definitely. We had one product that scales across like million of pages that we stayed on page 2 for about 6 to 9 months, and just seeing that we had impression was like, hey, we can still make it. And then eventually went into page 1, and a lot of things changed. But yeah, it's right, like sometimes obviously if maybe it's just a handful of impression of one page, not a big deal. But if you have a lot of pages and you have a lot of impression, is maybe a good indicator that you could work on them a bit more. And then
Yeah, that's a good takeaway, right? That's something that when you're getting started that you can actually measure if you're not getting clicks on this stuff. But you can see, well, we're at the bottom of page 2 and we're getting 25 impressions, and then maybe we've moved up and we get more impressions because scroll, and then you move on to the next page. You haven't got any clicks yet, but at least you're making progress and you have something to track as you've got. So say you got 25 articles out and you're starting to see a few clicks on 5 of them, but the other ones you're just seeing impressions. But at least then you can kind of watch that bubble up and have something to track besides the couple of articles that are getting clicks so far. So yeah, that's a good one, Lemar. Okay, next question we got from Cesar. He says, I want my product pages to, next one from Cesar. Yeah, I want my product pages to rank better. How long should the product description be?
72.5 words.
Okay, 72
you have to showcase the value of your product. You have to communicate well how it helps your potential buyer. I don't know, it can be 5 words, it can be 10, it can be 72.
But there's probably like a limit of where this makes sense, right? Like that it.
I wouldn't do less than a paragraph.
No less than a paragraph, or roughly 72.5 words. Fabrizio, what do you think?
There's definitely, as Limor said, there's definitely no guidelines from anyone on the advised, like,
I say especially for conversion pages, which can be like 1, 2, 3 convert.
Yeah. I think it's really down to the page, it's really down to the product. In general, probably doing more than less is better, right? Like if I have to do a landing page about my product with one block and one sentence, it's probably top of my mind going to do a bit less well than one where I put 3 to 4 block of content with explaining it a bit better. But then with time, maybe you're going to be proven wrong, and maybe you go back to having just one block of content, and is enough. It's just like, it's hard to tell until you get a feeling of it. And probably one way to validate it for your industry and product is to check who is ranking there, whether they are writing a Bible or whether it's just one sentence, right? If it's just one
Yeah, that's a
sentence, it's just
good.
one
Yeah,
sentence, right?
if they're at 71.5 words, then your 72.5 words will probably help.
I had insurance cases that actually having like thin pages was the thing, and IKEA that you had to put in 3 extra blocks of text. So it's like it differs by industry and what the customer needs are.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
depends on the competition, I guess, as well, depending on your category, say so, like how many people are in that. And yeah, I think that what Lemore said about, just look at your competition and kind of see who's ranking and how much content they have and what's that content about, give you a good idea.
probably, like, since we expanded to more market, one thing that we notice is that Google appreciation of like good content in English is a bit more sophisticated than other markets where more text still helps
100%.
them, because the corpus of the web there is a bit smaller, because they have less website, less quality website sometimes. Not that other markets have got worse website than English markets, but in some markets the web is slightly less developed, right? And that is the only thing that if I were to bet, I would write a little bit more in some less understood languages, which is pretty much everything but English, I would say.
I can vouch for that. In
Yeah.
Hebrew, it works.
Yeah, I've seen it in Arabic. I've seen it in French. Like it's like 2004 algorithm in some of the languages that I've seen some pretty good ranking stuff on a lot less effort than in English. And it's just part of it's the competition, I think, but part of it's maybe they don't push the algorithm as hard because there's not so much spam, I guess.
I think it's also less of a sample data for the AI and everything. It's very, understandable.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. We got another one here from Chaz. He says, "Do you find podcast transcripts to be beneficial for SEO, or any other tips for utilizing that resource?" Yeah, that's a good one. You guys have any experience with podcast stuff? I heard that there's a dying podcast somewhere in this chat happening.
I actually launched their podcast this year because I was on sabbatical leave, and in this year, last year, I was on sabbatical leave, and I was launching
I
this
was like, you're
project.
already failing at 20 days into
No, not yet,
Okay.
not yet.
First advice: publish
Exactly,
podcasts.
exactly. It was May last year, and I didn't focus at all on. To be honest, I was doing it just to learn a bit more about podcasts. I wasn't probably the most serious podcaster ever. I didn't focus on SEO as a mean to discover my podcast, and therefore I did not bother with transcription. I think I would do, and people were asking for transcription. I would do them for the usability and the user who are landing on these pages and want to read the transcript. In terms of like the content of a transcription ranking, I'm not so sure, because it's a very unstructured. Imagine you're having a conversation. If we put the transcript of this session right now, is a completely unstructured chat between us, which is probably not the best way, not the best blurb of words that will make you rank for, in this case, a startup SEO or things like that. So if then you put extra time to structure that content, almost turn it into a blog post, maybe, but then it's almost redoing it, right? Like, I think, it's quite a bit of work in my case, I didn't do it because it was too much effort to
What do you think,
to.
Limor?
I'm a big fan of transcripts. I think we should treat podcasts like we treat videos and webinars. I don't think we need to list everything we say, but we can edit it and list the main things, the Q&A and things like that, and actually have some added value to it. If I can, I do that. I schema it. I make sure that that sound get as much code and text wrapping as I can. And
So
yes, I
you're
would
saying you make
post
like
it on
an
a blog.
edited version of it? You like
Not of the
curate it?
podcast. Not of the like yeah.
Mm.
Seen it
Yeah,
done on YouTube. I don't think there's a reason not to do it in podcasts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I like it. I think of like it. There's a lot of content there, right? And then a lot of times people talk about something, and you maybe heard it on the podcast. Like back to Fabrizio talking about the usability side. I think about sometimes I hear something on a podcast, and then I want to like learn. What was that quote? What did he say exactly about that? What was she asking him? And then like if you can jump in the transcript and you can find that spot, and then you can kind of reiterate that point that you were trying to learn, or that you caught most of it, or you wanted to, instead of scrubbing through the podcast trying to find these people talking about whatever again. Yeah, I find it very helpful that way. And yeah, whether or not it's going to rank for you, I don't know, but it's definitely from usability. And I would think that some of those things are going to come up that people talk about, are going to be useful, and it's just added content for your site. It sure doesn't hurt. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do.
Also a small hack, you can link from it to your content.
Right. Oh yeah, that's good. You can set up for internal linking, and that gives you another avenue for that, which is something I think. I guess I mean, SEO is a big topic, but that's something that we didn't touch on that I think is something that is a low-hanging fruit for everybody that I think is really underutilized, is the internal linking. We've kind of seen that the internal linking is a really good ranking signal, and it's
Yeah.
pretty
That
easy.
also requires a scale of content, though.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, of course, of course. But I feel like most people that I just see a lot of times that people, they have like a decent amount of content, and then that's something that they haven't really spent any time on, and it's something that it's not that hard. You can come up with your blue widgets target page that you're trying to get more traffic and ranking to, and you can easily just run through all of your blog posts and link your blue widget text over to the money page, and it's shown to be quite effective, and I just feel like it's something that a lot of people miss. It's a pretty easy one. So yeah, that's good. Let's see. We got any other questions rolling in? Looks like we cleared that queue out. Fabrizio, I wanted to ask you one more thing. When you were working on this plan with Wise, and there's like just 4,000 different avenues that you can go with it, how do you like decide what to prioritize when you're dealing with such a big, it's like, sure, you have the resources, but how do you kind of prioritize where you're gonna start, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the challenge with that is that until we had conversion data, which meant content or pages being out, ranking, driving traffic, and driving customers, new customer growth. Until we had the data, was really difficult to put like monetary value against one type of page as opposed to another. So what we did to get there as fast as possible, we tried to, like, with very low effort, to almost carpet bomb as much as we could in the early days, to avoid betting just in one area and then being completely wrong. So we tried to cover as much, obviously with a decent approach, with decent content, decent pages, but covering as much as possible, as fast as possible, maybe in a very suboptimal way in terms of what the content was like, what the product or pages were like. And then like 6 months in, then we got to the point where this priority exercise was actually backed up by data. You could prioritize based on search volume, but you still don't know whether this is going to drive revenue to your business, right? Until you actually rank for it, until you actually get traffic to it. So we went really broad and then really narrow in terms of like where to go. And then the day we started to have conversion data, then it was really easy because now we can tell already if we write a new article about this topic, we can already know the average ranking, average conversion rate, average performance of that
And
topic.
that first sprint that you're talking about was all English content? This is way
yeah, definitely. It was just in
Okay.
English. We focus on one language. We focus on both blog and product landing pages. It wasn't just literally just one area, but because these kind of operate a bit different, right? Product landing pages was an SEO, a designer, and a developer, and the blog content was an SEO and a kind of writer. So slightly different setup. But we tried to, if we had 5 product ideas, we did all 5. And then like the quarter after, we abandoned 3 or 2 to work on 1 or 2, as opposed to just do one without having that too much like learning. This was the case of us entering a completely new vertical with no understanding of it. If I were to do this again in the same industry, I probably would already be betting, or if I've worked in a similar company before, I would probably have a better sense of where to bet based on what was going on. But back in time, in our industry, there wasn't too much going on sometimes, and then we literally had no data. We couldn't look at the biggest competitor out there and say, okay, we're going to copy them, hoping that what they do works, right? Like it wasn't quite the case for us, not that much. But then in other industries, probably a bit easier to get your priority list out of someone else priority list, in the sense of, if you see that people have this type of content, it probably is a good way to look at it, and then you can just maybe prioritize the volume that each area drive with, but you're still assuming what the conversion rate will be once the traffic lands there. You know that someone is ranking for it, you don't know how much revenue they're generating, right? So there's still a guess exercise for a while until you actually rank yourself, right? And
how about you, Limor? How do you prioritize your team and kind of decide where to go next and how to keep it focused?
Well, I try to do some kind of balance between the effort and the value of things. Well, we have, I guess, less dedicated dev resources on the SEO hand, so it's about knowing how long it'll take in content terms, knowing how long it'll rank. Like every SEO, usually when especially when it comes to a startup, you go for the quick wins. You go for the things that won't require devs to break down your entire build and build it back up just to make it a little better. Like Fabrizio said, you sometimes start with creating content, even though it's not the best. You just start putting your assets out there, and I'm totally all for it. Specifically similar web, where a data driven, it's product driven content. We have data that's creating content by itself and multiplies by itself. And so wherever I would find anything, any other variable like that, any other thing that I can build off like that my product gives me, the resources naturally, that's where I'll try to go. Even if if we go back to the academy side, if I do an academy about a certain topic, I'll dig into that topic and see what can I scale, what is something I could produce relatively easily and duplicate. Did I perfect the process? Can I take a bulk of content and put it in 5 languages? That's how I try to prioritize. How do I scale fastest in the least amount of effort with the resources I have?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's finding those things that you can double down on and push that pressure on the thing that's working is always, I find, effective. Like, yeah, you throw that wide net, and then you find the couple of things that are hitting, and then you just push as much as you can on those, and see where
Yeah,
they
they
take you.
get you the resources, and
Uh,
then you can double down, the complex stuff.
Exactly. Let's see. We got a couple questions left here. Let's see. Xavier, I guess this is kind of on what we were just talking about. Says, when you're new and you don't have an audience, how do you source your content materials? Who do you ask for? Yeah, I mean, I guess this is a bit on the, start with the keywords, right, guys? And then, work your way up into finding what's got some traffic, and then start to put together your content plan. And then if you're going to have to hire a writer, or you're going to have to start writing yourself, and that kind of stuff. But I guess that's kind of what we covered a bit already. But to address that, yeah, I mean, as Fabrizio had in the slides, yeah, you got to kind of do the research first, and then kind of pick out the things that you're going to do next. Let's see. We got Rashan. Rashan says, what's the best off-page linking strategy other than social media sites? Yeah, what do you guys like to do for, I mean, just general link building? What are your go-to low-hanging fruits, we'll say, for trying to get some of your first links when you're getting going?
Bit of a spoiler alert: we don't do anything on this front, but we are quite lucky that we are a relatively popular company. I guess early days, what that worked for us, and that's why we had a relatively strong domain when we started SEO. We had a lot of PR and publicity to promote and just to get noticed in the finance industry. Our PR and creative teams did crazy things like getting naked on the streets and things like that, to do campaigns about transparency and
That's the
money
takeaway, guys.
transfer.
You get naked in the
And
streets.
yeah. But like without going to this extreme, I think like trying to promote
Speedo,
your
then.
company is definitely the easiest way to, the more your product gets popular, the more your company is well known, and the more your company gets publicity, is an easy way to get links, if you don't want to go down the route of building them. In our case, we didn't do it, but then I understand that not all startups, they get so much attention as others do, but
Because they don't get naked.
Yeah,
yeah, we it's probably a strategy, but like regardless of the way that you have to attract attention, there are, I guess, many ways that you can be known, right, and then be linked, and for some reason in your industry, that to me is at least, as opposed to, you could deploy resources to do link building, but as a startup, imagine on day one of your SEO program, you haven't got a single page. So what are you going to be building links to, right? Like, I'd rather build the pages and then hope that some links will come than building links and have no pages. Literally the first 4 years of Wise SEO, before we kind of decided to invest heavily on SEO, was a website with ton of links that anyone would dream of, and not a single page. There was a home page plus like Help Center FAQ with a couple of articles. So like, if you don't build the pages, you're still not going to rank. And I would prioritize these over like links. Yet at some point you might be in a position where you have maybe the right pages, but you don't have links. But I'd rather get to that problem first, as opposed to say, okay, I launch a startup today, I need a little bit more links. Because it might not be as scalable as you think, right? Like,
so build good content, or get naked in the street. We'll quote you on that. Limor, what do you think for
Naked
getting
is
started?
good content. That's first. I go for the holy grail. Well, it's not the holy grail. It's like holy grail and bugging people. It's creating shareable content. I work at a certain topic. I research the topic. I will try to make content, but with some kind of, I don't know, insight or provocation about that content, an opinion. basically, and maybe approach discussions in forum, approach people on Twitter, going like, "Hey, did you see this? Hey, did you look at that? I have this, I have that." Maybe try to get into a conversation without at first saying I have this, I have that, but actually getting into conversation about my areas of expertise, about my product, and then trying to show them, "Hey, I've written this. What do you think? I think that. What do you think?" and stuff like that. But basically, start from creating content that is shareable in a way that it can create a conflict conversation, maybe, and also again, easy from where I work now, but database content, top stuff, review stuff, things like that.
All right. So again, with the content, but this time no getting naked. Just make it more shareable. Okay. Different
Naked in
strategy,
forums.
but different strategy, but that's good. All right, guys. Well, we're coming into the end of the hour here. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for your presentation there. Thanks everybody who came and checked in with their questions. We had Bangladesh in here. Let's see where else. India, all over the place. So pretty fun. Canada, a couple other ones. So good. Good to see everyone. Thanks for coming on, and I guess we'll see you next time. I'm probably going to host another one of these in a couple of months with Duda, and you can follow all of us on Twitter. We'll put the notes down below in the show. So if you guys got any questions, you can always follow up with us there, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.